Hey, my relatives. This is Mark Charles, and it is Friday, July 30th, about just after noon, and I'm sitting down drinking my second cup of coffee. I want to begin, as I always do, by acknowledging that I'm speaking to you from what is now known as the land of the Piscataway, or what is now known as Washington, D.C., but these are the traditional lands of the Piscataway. And the Piscataway are the people that were living here. They were hunting here. They were farming here and fishing here long before Columbus got lost at sea, and they're still here. So I want to honor the Piscataway people. I want to thank them for their stewardship of these lands and just state how humbled I am to be living on these lands today. You haven't seen me a lot this week, and I apologize for some of that. I did my first sunrise video this morning in about a week because on Monday we had kind of a freak rainstorm here, and it came in with a bunch of strong winds, even 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts, I think. And it knocked a tree branch down near our house, but it fell right on our car and pretty much smashed our front window of our vehicle. And so our vehicle was not drivable for most of the week, and I had to we took a few days to get an appointment, but we took it in yesterday to get the windshield replaced. And so the car is now drivable. So I was able to get out to the Potomac River this morning and watch the sunrise, which is now on my Facebook and Instagram and my Twitter accounts. But and then as far as stuff with my second cup of coffee, I've been pondering a lot of what I've been watching going on this week. As you've seen on Twitter, I've been engaging with some of them, but wasn't sure what I really wanted to get on and talk about in a longer fashion. So it wasn't until this morning, as I was sitting down drinking my second cup of coffee and thinking through some stuff, there's a few things I wanted to share. The first thing I just want to talk about very briefly is it's this video I put up. It was put out by CCDA this week. It's about a 5 or 6 minute video, and it is about it's called The Word on the Street, and it's just they asked me to do a short video encouraging people to engage even civically coming out of the pandemic. And so when I was on the Mescalero Apache Reservation last week, I had some time to record that video, and CCDA has shared it out. So I'm going to put it now into the comment section of this live stream, and I'll also put it into the notes on YouTube. But I just wanted to share that link there. You also probably noticed that I was tweeting yesterday about an article that came out by the Religious News Service, RNS, and Emily Miller, who is one of their reporters, had contacted me and wanted to talk to me about a new effort by both Sam Brownback and another Native leader, Nigel, I forget his last name at the moment, I apologize for that, but wanted to do, they're trying to publicize the apology that was given in 2009. It was signed on December 19, 2009. It was the 2010 Department of Defense Appropriations Act. It's this 7 bullet point apology that I reference frequently in my writing, in my speaking, in my lectures, that was buried by President Obama, by the Congress and the Senate, and never mentioned publicly. And Sam Brownback, who was a senator at the time, went on to become governor in Kansas. And now that he's out of political office, I'm guessing he is wanting to kind of publicize this a little bit more. And so they're going through some efforts, and that's gotten a little bit of press, not a lot, but a little bit. And so Emily wrote me about it, or emailed me and asked if I would be willing to talk about it. So I'm going to put a link to that article once again in the comment section here. And it was an interesting. I was very glad to be interviewed about it. The effort is actually to try and get Joe Biden to acknowledge this apology, and that's interesting because Joe Biden was part of the administration that buried it. He's repeatedly said that he was adamant about wanting to be the last person in the room when decisions were made. And I'm quite certain this was a decision that must have come up because it was originally scheduled to be, when they were signing the bill, it was scheduled to be a public signing. And then they did, at the last moment, from what I've been told, decided to make it a private signing, and then it never got publicized that there was an apology in this. And I'm sure there was political debate on both sides. I'm guessing Joe Biden was a part of that discussion. But I also know, right, even from when I tried to publicize it and we hosted a public reading of the apology in front of the Capitol building, I sent a letter to the Obama administration requesting that they come and take ownership of this apology. And I got a letter back from the Obama White House that said neither the president nor any of his staff would be at my meeting. And so it's interesting, right, that now they are trying to get President Biden to acknowledge it when he was a part of the administration that essentially buried it. And this also just reminded me, right, Joe Biden has not been putting Native issues at the forefront. Yes, he's done something a bit unprecedented by naming Deb Haaland as his Secretary of the Interior. But, we, in the last election, the 2020 election, we had really the most engagement presidential candidates have ever had with any country, where we had two major presidential forums, one in Iowa and another one in Nevada. And the largest one was the first one, the Franklin Myr Native American Presidential Forum. And Joe Biden just flat out didn't come to it. He didn't come, period. In the second one in Las Vegas, which was a bit smaller, a lot of the candidates didn't come in person because the impeachment hearings were going on. And there were a few, it was Tom Strayer and myself, who showed up personally. But most of the rest did a video dial-in and addressed the audience remotely, because a lot of them were in the impeachment hearings. They were senators, and so they had to be in Washington. And Joe Biden wasn't a senator at that point. He wasn't in office, but he still declined to come and sent a short, very short, maybe 30-second to 45-second video saying he would be the best ally or the best friend Natives ever had in the White House if he won, which was ironic because I was running, right? And I don't know how Joe Biden could possibly consider himself to be a better friend to any country in the White House than I would be. But that's the arrogance of white landowning men. So anyway, the point is he hasn't put Native issues at the forefront. And he hasn't said much to kind of take a bold stand to do things. He's done a few things behind the scenes, but he hasn't taken a bold stand on a lot of issues. And so I personally don't think he's going to have the courage to address this, but we'll see. We'll see what he decides to do. So anyway, I put that article out there. And then the article I actually really wanted to talk about today was one that I read this morning in Politico. I actually saw the headline yesterday, and then I read it this morning. And it's titled, let me put it into the comment section here. This article is titled, "America is Not Racist Becomes a GOP 2024 Mantra." And I want to read some of the intro into this article, a few of the first paragraphs. The mantra used by nearly all of the Republican contenders is unavoidable in the earliest stages of the GOP's nominating campaign. At the annual Family Leadership Summit in Iowa this month, all three potential presidential prospects on stage, former Vice President Mike Pence, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, took turns joining in the refrain in one form or another. Goes on to say that top Democrats, including President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, have said publicly they don't believe America is a racist country. But Republicans are hoping to portray the party as out of step with the thinking of mainstream America, and by attempting to harness lightning rod issues such as critical race theory and defund the police, the GOP is signaling race will again be at the center of the 2024 campaign. Goes on to say, for Republicans, the focus on race is not without risk. Recent polls suggest majorities of Americans believe discrimination exists in America. More voters trusted Biden than Donald Trump to handle race relations when given the choice last year. And though defund the police movement polls show polled poorly with voters, the controversy surrounding critical race theory is not yet especially well known among the broader electorate. The article also stated that Tim Scott, the only black Republican senator, saw his national profile rise after declaring in the GOP's official response to Biden's first joint address to Congress that Congress is not a racist country, that America is not a racist country. And this month he announced that he had raised $9.6 million in the second quarter of this year, an eye-popping haul. The article also stated that liberals want to teach that our children that if you're white, you're automatically racist, and that's just reprehensible to me, said Carmine Ball, a former Iowa state representative who chairs the North Side conservative group in Ankeny. If a black man runs on the platform that we are not a racist country, I think that is one of the best things we could do. Went on to say that Pence is already trying out a version of the message, telling a crowd in the early nominating state of New Hampshire last month that America is not a racist country. It is past time for America to discard the left-wing myth of systemic racism. And his remark won a standing ovation at the Hillsborough County GOP's annual Lincoln Reagan dinner. That's just a summary of that article. I put a lot of it into, you can read the whole article in the link. But I wanted to talk briefly about this, right? Because the media, by and large, except for Fox News and a few of these other right-wing, is largely left-leaning. It has a left-leaning bias. And it will protect the Democratic voice whenever possible. And Politico is no different. They're a little less. I mean, they're not as much of a pulpit for the left as CNN or MSNBC, but they do still have very much left-leaning tendencies in their reporting, and so they're trying to protect the Democratic Party somewhat in this reporting by focusing on how the Republicans are using this in the mantra and how they are really pressing the conversation forward. But they did point out twice that Democrats are picking it up and they are not refuting the Republicans, right? And this is what's going to be problematic going into the next election cycle. First of all, the midterm elections in 2022, and then the next presidential elections, major elections in 2024, which is going to be the exact same thing we saw with Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, as well as with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, which is the left and the right, the difference between implicit and explicit. So if Donald Trump, the Republicans, are going to say, make America great again, the Democrats are going to come back and say, well, America's already great. Not only are they going to, so as the Republicans are coming out and saying we're opposed and we're pushing conversation on CRT and all these other things, and we're not a racist country, the Democrats may have a little bit different position, but they will, at the end of the day, end up saying as well, America is not a racist country. They've already said that. Both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have repeated that America is not a racist country. And again, this demonstrates how American exceptionalism, the myth of American exceptionalism, which is rooted in the lie of white supremacy, is a bipartisan value. And you don't rise to political prominence within our two-party system without affirming the white landowning men of both parties that they are exceptional. And so as our nation is grappling with systemic racism, right, the right is going to come out, as this article ended, with Pence saying America is not a racist country. It's past time for America to discard the left-wing myth of systemic racism. Only a white person could say that. But what's fascinating about this is, right, the Democrats are marching out their candidates of color to basically refute that as well. And, you know, with Vice President Harris coming out and saying America is not a racist country, I'm sure some of the diversity that President Biden has put into his cabinet will be pressured to come out and repeat that same lie. Hopefully they won't, but I'm certain they will be pressured to do so by the Biden administration. And so what's going to happen is we're going to have the left or the right saying we're not racist explicitly, we're not systemically racist, and the left is going to respond by saying, you're right, we're not racist, but we have some pretty bad players and they're all in the Republican camp, and this is the problem we have to face. And again, as is the goal of both parties, nothing's going to change. And what makes this the most laughable is something that was stated in the last paragraph of this article, which I'm sure no one even caught, which is Vice President Pence's remarks that it's time to discard the myth of systemic racism was made at the Hillsborough County GOP's annual Lincoln-Reagan dinner. Later this afternoon, about 1 or 1:30, I'm going to go through chapter 10, I think it is, or maybe it's 11 of my book about Abraham Lincoln and the genocide of Native peoples. And both parties claim the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. Both parties hold him up as not only our greatest president, but literally as a messiah, as the redemption figure of our nation. And Abraham Lincoln was a blatant white supremacist and one of the most genocidal presidents in our nation's history. And we actually celebrate him because he found a way to remove the blatant institution of chattel slavery, yet still keep white supremacy alive and the institution of slavery constitutionally protected through the 13th Amendment. He completed manifest destiny by literally ethnically cleansing the states of Minnesota, Arizona, Colorado, and New Mexico of Native peoples. And that's why we celebrate him as our greatest president. Not because he freed the slaves, but because he kept our institutionalized racism and white supremacy intact and gave us the tools we are using today, both Democrats and Republicans, to keep people of color marginalized. And of course, the writers of this article didn't get that at all when they pointed out that he made this comment at a dinner named after one of our most genocidal and white supremacist presidents in history, Abraham Lincoln. So it's going to be an interesting midterm election and even more fascinating election in 2024. I'm actually grateful that race is going to play a much more center stage. And I think we need to make sure that we not only that we do not allow the two-party system to have a meaningless debate that doesn't allow for any real change. And we have to make sure that we continue to confront both parties, both sides, with a common memory of this nation's history. We need to demand our candidates are confronted with the white supremacist, racist, and sexist history our nation has demonstrated since its founding and continues to use today. And hold them accountable, make them answer for these actions, which are absolutely systemic and have been institutionalized. And so on one hand, I'm grateful that race is going to be a debate. I'm frustrated because if not only the two-party system, but the mainstream media has its way, it will merely be a debate between implicit versus explicit. It will not actually address the systemic problems that we have. And the left-wing leaning media is no more interested than Fox News is in bringing the debate around to our systemic problems. They would much rather keep it as we had a few bad players, we're actually good as a nation, and we just have to deal with a few people who've gotten in the way. They would much rather have that debate. So this is the work we have ahead of us. We have to continue to build, to create this common memory. We have to continue to address these things And we have to find ways to hold our leaders and our candidates accountable to this history without dismissing it. And they're going to continue to roll this out, right? Yes, any person of color who runs in the Republican Party saying that we are not racist will, just like what happened with Tim Scott, will hit a gold mine. White landowning men will pay people of color enormous amounts of money to come forward and say that we're not a racist country. Not only in the Republicans, but also in the Democrats, right? President Biden came out and said, "We the people" now means all the people. Cory Booker came out and said that the racism, sexism, white supremacy in our foundations does not detract from our nation's greatness, right? These are all things that the parties will demand their members of color repeat and affirm, because, again, this is all about affirming the white landowning male, that they're still exceptional. And that's where the money ultimately comes from. So we have a lot of work to do, my relatives. I hope this is helpful and informative. I hope this discussion continues to move forward. And I look forward to being a part of that dialogue as best I can as we move forward, not only into the midterms, but into the next 2024 campaign. So in about an hour, within sometime between 1 and 2, I'm going to do my live stream looking at the book study. And we're going to be going through, let me just verify which chapter we're going through. If you notice, I've moved my studio a little bit. I used to be in another part of our house in kind of the den area, but I would have to tear down and set up my camera every time I wanted to do it, because it was more of a common space area. So now I'm in a corner of our house, and I've made a bit more studio. We'll see how this works out. But yeah, so this afternoon, sometime between 1 and 2 Eastern time, we will be looking at chapter 10, which is titled Abraham Lincoln and Native Genocide, going through Unsettling Truth, the ongoing dehumanizing legacy of the doctrine of discovery. And so I hope you join me for that. It will live stream both on Facebook and on my YouTube channel, and we'll announce that on Twitter when we start that sometime within the next hour to an hour and a half at the most, I think. Anyway, my relatives, I hope you have a great day. I look forward to talking with you again soon, and we will definitely hopefully be picking up steam a little bit more as time goes on. And Hakonet.